governance and structure. This domain covers between 9 and 11% of the exam. And Lisa, if you'll just advance the slide. Okay, so today I'm going to cover the governance section, and then Lisa is going to cover volunteers and what's the other piece, Lisa? I'm sorry.
Components.
Components, that's right. So in regards to governance, it relates to how an association functions by outlining the vision, values, authority, and roles of the organization and its stakeholders. It's about conducting ongoing review of the government's documents, establishing, integrating, and maintaining an effective and representative governance system, to establish and maintain governance structure, to serve as a liaison with the board and executive committees to implement the board's policy and vision, and to facilitate the activities of the association's board of directors, committees, task force, and special interests. So this is really the role of the CSC in relationship to governance. Okay. So the governance structure, let's go over what it typically includes. The first is a board of directors and officers, and their primary role is to perform the work. Next is an executive committee, and the executive committee has the authority to act on behalf of the entire board. And then next is standing committees. These are ongoing groups that continue from one year to the next. They should be described in the bylaws, and they really focus on the long-term needs of the association as identified in the mission statement. The next group you may see in a governance structure would be an ad hoc or task force. They're appointed by the chief elective officer, and they're really self-limiting in time and scope. They focus definitely on short-term specific needs, and that should definitely be clearly identified when an ad hoc or a task force group is set up. The other thing you might see that isn't listed here is a special interest group, and you can look up, there is more details on what special interest groups are. And then of course there's the association staff. It's key to note that the CEO and the chief elective officer function as a team, and this actually comes up as a question in some of the practice exams. Okay, next slide, please. There are three main documents that describe how an association is governed. So let's go through each of those. One is the Articles of Incorporation, and these are really viewed as an agreement between the state and the association. And I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to really read and understand what should be included in the Articles of Incorporation. There are some specific details that delineate the Articles of Corporation, bylaws, and the Manual of Policy and Procedures. And from what I've heard, those do come up on the exam. Number two is the bylaws, and they are viewed as an agreement between the association and its membership. So key to note is that changes to the bylaws typically require either a member referendum or a vote of the governing body. And again, there are more details in the professional practices book that really describe what are in the bylaws. So things like statement of purpose, forms and types of qualifications of membership, dues structures but not dues amounts, the list of elected officers including terms, powers, duties, and roles for filling vacancies, the role of the chief executive officer, voting qualifications, General Assembly and special meeting criteria. So there's quite an extensive list of what would be expected to be included in the bylaws. And then third is the Manual of Policy and Procedures, and these are viewed as an agreement between the association and the staff. So policies really spell out the standards of conduct and decision making. They articulate the strategy and philosophy of an organization's governing body. Really, they get down into the more you know, how do you enact the bylaws? And then procedures delineate how to administer the policies. Policies and procedures generally address three key areas: governance, so how the governing body governs both itself and the association. Management and operations, so day-to-day operations of the association. And then third is public image and public policy, so media relations, government relations, and of course crisis management. The board's responsibilities are to establish the goals, including mission, members, goods and services, and geographic focus, to establish means used to achieve ends. Their responsibility is to hire the CSE. They focus on policy. They act as a body. So it's key to know that when a decision is being made by a board, it can't be made by an individual member. They really need to act as a body in decision making. And they also have the responsibility of monitoring results. So the role of a volunteer is to ensure that the association serves the needs of its membership by establishing direction and policy for programs, products, and service. They really do focus on the long-term strategic issues. Now, the role of the staff is quite different. It is to keep the association moving ahead in the direction according to the policies established by the volunteers. So they're implementing the procedures that deliver the programs, products, and services to the members. So they focus more on the short-term operational issues. So let's go into more board responsibilities and acting in good faith versus bad faith. So it's important to use ordinary diligence and care. Usually a board member would not be found personally liable for debts or responsibility of the association. Incompetence or bad judgment is not sufficient grounds for personal liability. So bad faith is based on gross negligence, an intentional disregard that could cause injury, or does cause injury, violates any kind of antitrust laws, or is working beyond the scope of duty. This is important to remember actual versus apparent authority. And again, I have a feeling we'll probably see this on the exam. And here you want to remember the hydro level case. And if you haven't read about that, I would encourage you to go into I believe it's into the law handbook and read about the hydro level case. It might be in both books. So actual authority, if a chapter has actual authority, the national along with the chapter will be responsible for obligations incurred. Apparent authority as it relates to parent-chapter relations, and apparent authority relating to employment and antitrust. So basically it's saying here that a staff member or a volunteer could have, if they're seen as having apparent authority when it comes to any kind of antitrust laws, that they could be held liable. Moving on to the Sarbanes-Oxley policies. Here are 5 key pieces that would be good to remember. Create an audit committee, adopt a code of ethics, establish a document management policy, adopt a form of employment policy and procedures, and conduct internal file reviews. Principles of Sarbanes-Oxley, transparent decision-making, accurate financial reporting, and use of accepted auditing procedures. 3 key things to remember. In regards to negligence, fraud, and dishonesty, I put up a few definitions there for you, a couple definitions. Gross negligence, it's gross disregards for one's responsibility, and fraud includes misappropriation of association funds or authorization of association payments for personal gain. Staff is usually shielded from personal liability, but fraud and dishonesty are exceptions. And this is where it's important for associations to have director and officers insurance, which will generally protect the board from these claims. Okay, we're going to stop there in regards to governance. Are there any quick questions that I can answer for you or clarifications? Okay, I don't see any questions coming up or over the phone. So hearing none, I think I'll turn it over then to Lisa to move into volunteer leadership.
Okay. Okay, so volunteer leadership, there are a couple of areas that were sort of parceled out in the study guide, so I kind of organized it that way. The first is a focus on strengthening leadership at the board level to advance the organization. And best practices for attracting and keeping volunteers are recruitment, volunteer orientation, recognition, and support. I'm going to go into each of those a little bit more. Recruitment. Current leaders should always be on the lookout for people with people who can take over in the future and be the next leaders of the association. They have a very long list of qualities on page 7 of the professional practices book. I kind of summarized some of them here. People with a demonstrated commitment, they've got a good support system at work and home, especially when your volunteers are, if we're talking about the board of directors, is a lot of time away from their office. They've got to travel, and they've got to make sure that there's support there. They also have to have the time. That's very important. Somebody can have all of the commitment and passion and everything, but if they don't have the time to do it, it's not going to be very effective. Sound judgment, integrity, ability to think strategically, because we learned that's the board's job to be the strategic direction of the association. So they need to be able to have good teamwork abilities and communication mentoring skills. And my favorite, the ability to bow out gracefully when their term is over. Not everyone has this ability. It's a very good one for volunteer leaders. Orientation. This is very important, and I think it will probably show up on the exam. I feel like it was repeated throughout. This provides an overview of the association and identifies how and where the new leader fits into the picture. You're going to want to include things like documentation on the structure of the organization, legal documents, the articles of incorporation and bylaws. Make sure that your volunteer leaders see these, know what's in them, understand everything that's in them. It's going to be guiding everything that they're doing. Management documents, the policies and procedures, financial reports. They are responsible for the financial health of the organization, so they need to be able to understand what the reports are telling them. Job descriptions for the board positions, internal documents, such as code of ethics. The strategic plan obviously is very important in guiding the direction of the organization, and an organizational chart. You'll also probably want to include the fiduciary duties as board members as a way to clarify your expectations for the board. Recognition is important. Volunteer leaders want to feel acknowledged, and so they should be formally recognized in front of their peers who are the members. I'm sure all good associations do this, email blasts, at the conference, etc. You want to provide good support for your volunteers, and one of the biggest ways we can do this is through staff assistance, helping with minutes, setting up calls, finding, supporting materials and documentation for an issue. Also the D&O insurance to protect them from being held liable for the association's actions. The focus here is on ethical behavior. There are two key concepts in a code of ethics. First is conflict of interest. This is, a wordy definition to basically say they can't use their position on the board as a way to, benefit themselves as an individual or another specific individual. And another key concept that the reading pointed out was the appearance of unethical behavior or an unethical decision can be just as damaging as an actual lapse or violation. So that's something to keep in mind. And weaved all throughout all of this is communication. Very important. Remember, member to member, staff to staff. And there's all those other iterations of volunteer to volunteer, board to board. For me, it's just easier to just remember member to member and staff to staff, because board to board, those are your members, and volunteer to those are your members too. So just member to member, staff to staff. Fiduciary duties. Duty of care. This is your negligence standard. It says the person must act in the same manner as a reasonably prudent person in their position would. On the exam, questions about lack of participation or preparation for a board meeting, for example, would be talking about the duty of care. Duty of loyalty says that their duty serving on the board is placed above all other duties, and they have to have undivided allegiance when making decisions for the association. This is where you'll see questions about conflicts of interest and disclosure on the exam. And just briefly about resolution of conflict of interest. There's 3 ways that these can be resolved. No implications. The person discloses the conflict. The board says, okay, I think we're fine with it, and they move on. It's fine. Recusal. They disclose, and board, decides that they should just not vote, or maybe they should leave the room and not vote. Removal, resignation, perhaps the issue is egregious and it calls for them stepping off the board. Regardless of how it's resolved, there should be procedures in place to use in reacting to disclosures. The duty of obedience is the duty to adhere to the organization's mission, bylaws, and rules. And it's also important to remember the duty of confidentiality. I mean, it's not a specific fiduciary duty, but to keep confidential things confidential. It's an important part of the board member responsibility and accountability for their actions as a board. Succession planning. The focus here is to develop a system for leadership succession, doing this through our volunteer leadership and also our staff leadership. The board works to mentor and engage capable members in the association to step into these leadership positions in the future. Some best practices here are policies regarding term limits, job descriptions for board positions, and clear delineations of roles and responsibilities. I feel like those words, clear delineations of roles and responsibilities, are made for an exam question. The CSE works with the board to develop the staff leadership succession plan, and this may include a number of things. You might talk about the person in charge on an interim basis, put some policies in place to guide the search committee in looking for a new CSE. Benefits to the terminated CSE, or if there was an unexpected death, the CSE's family. And something to keep in mind is that this needs to be consistent with the employment contract in place. Okay, component relations. These are typically geographically or functionally based. Some benefits to the members are they can get continuing education and networking on the state or local level. And they have influence in legislative or regulatory issues in their specific area. Benefits to the lead association are that they're great marketing channels for products and services. They serve as a volunteer leadership pipeline, and the membership can feel like they have a personal, closer connection, more of a grassroots effort. The communication, again, communication needs to be consistent, honest, and ongoing. And it's important to keep the organizational dynamic and the association culture in mind when you're communicating with each other. And it's all about building trust. You have to be sincere, hear the message, and then respond. And having that dependable follow-up is what really builds trust. Key steps for working effectively with components are definition of roles and responsibilities, affiliation agreement. This was stressed throughout the reading as being very important. In there you might want to include reporting requirements and consequences for if they do not meet those requirements, criteria and processes for creating and dissolving a component, orientation for leaders. We talked about that a little bit already, and you'll clarify your expectations for working together. Might also be good to put some expectations in that affiliation agreement. You identify a staff member to manage that relationship so they have the touch point, and determine what services the lead association will offer to the components, be it staff assistance and or monetary benefits or products, whatever it is. Determine that and make sure that the expectations are clear on both ends. The focus here is setting expectations and creating a productive and communicative relationship to achieve the mission of the organization. Federations and chapters. Legal. Separate incorporation for chapters is usually recommended or required. This serves as a legal line of defense to protect other entities in the federation. There is this possibility of piercing the corporate veil. I think they said it was not as common, but if a national organization authorizes or encourages illegal or damaging acts by the chapter, then obviously the national organization can be equally responsible. The fundamental liability issue for federations is risk management to contain legal or financial liability to the one level where it arises. So you're trying to keep that from contaminating all of the other levels of the federation. Carefully outline the rights and responsibilities of all participants in a single document. That's your federation charter, the affiliation agreement, and the most valuable asset of the national organization is the name. It's just something that was thrown in there, and it's good to remember. Subsidiary corporations. There are 5 reasons that were spelled out in the reading that associations create subsidiaries. To engage in activities that are not permitted by its purpose or bylaws. An example of that is a 501c6 creates a 501c3 so it can receive tax-deductible donations. Maybe it wants to offer services to meet the specific needs of a niche market, provide additional revenue sources through a profit-seeking enterprise, increase the scope and capacities of the association, or protect the association from possible financial failure of an activity. So if they take on a high-risk activity and that causes bankruptcy, having that activity occur in a subsidiary corporation can protect the viability of the association itself or its other activities. Communities of practice. I don't specifically remember reading this in any of the material. However, this is all over the study guide. So I figure that we probably should know it, or it wouldn't be in there. So I've kind of just done a little summary here based on the information from the study guide. The communities of practice are groups of people informally bound together by shared expertise and a passion for a joint enterprise. They create social capital, which then stirs behavioral change, which creates a positive influence on performance. And there are learning communities within organizations who work collaboratively on strategy, innovation, problem solving. They may be developing or promoting best practices. They're organic, spontaneous, and informal. Some success tips in managing communities of practice are bring the people together and provide an infrastructure for the communities to thrive. Okay, we have some sample questions. Are there any questions about that material before we get into these? No? Okay, I left my little window over here, so I can't see if anybody's typing anything in. So, Tammy, if you can monitor that, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either, but
okay.
Oh, no, now I'm seeing it, but I don't see any questions so far. So this is the first question: what is the proper relationship between a CSE and a board chair? So I'll give you a few minutes to look at the answers and then ask if anyone has what they think is the correct or best answer. Any educated guesses? Looks like we're getting a lot of responses for D. The two are partners with specific areas of focus, CSC on operations, and the board chair is the link to the volunteers and members. And that is the correct answer. Good job. Okay, let's move on to the next question then. In your role as executive director of a newly formed association, how will you establish, integrate, and maintain an effective and representative governance system to guide the association in accomplishing its mission? Again, I'll give you a few minutes and then ask for responses. Okay, any responses? I'm not seeing any. Can we move to the next slide then, Lisa?
Okay.
The answer is C, work with volunteers leaders to develop a strategic plan that will help association accomplish its vision and mission. I've noticed when I see questions like this and we see things like strategic plan, vision, and mission, those are key words. Mm-hmm. And I also think that this is a really good place to use the SPI acronym, scan, plan, implement, evaluate, and this would really be kind of that scanning, that initial stage. Okay, next question. In general, association policies and procedures should address which three areas? Any guesses on this one? This was covered in one of the first slides. Tanaka, yes, you said C. And yes, the correct answer is C. Governance, management operations, and public image and public policy.
Okay, is this one of my questions? It must be.
Yes.
Okay. What is the most effective way to ensure balance in the volunteer-staff relationship? Any ideas? Is there anything on the online? No?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had muted. Yes, we're seeing C as a response.
Yes, C, clear delineation of roles and responsibilities. Sounds like people felt pretty good about that one. So I'll just move on. Okay, Which of the following determines when a component and their lead association will move to joint planning?
Lisa?
Yes?
I'm hearing, are you hearing background noise?
Yes, but somebody's music is on.
Oh, there they came back.
It's off. Okay.
Okay, let me see. I'm not seeing any responses to this.
Anybody who's on the phone, you want to take a crack at it? I feel like we get more out of the questions when we can converse.
Are you open? Can we open up so that we're not all muted?
Yeah, I think as long as people put in the audio controls, as long as people put in the audio control, the audio code, then they can speak. If you're on the call, you can press #1# and you'll have the ability to speak.
So I got a B.
Okay. B, when the effort will impact the whole organization. Okay, the answer is actually D, when the association affiliation agreement requires participation in the effort. And I also liked B and thought that was correct. When I went back and looked at it, I thought, okay, this is one of these situations when there are, two right answers. And I thought that LERP would be our guide here. So first would be the legal, and that's the affiliation agreement. And I also thought that determines was a good word to look at, in that that kind of clued you into sort of an agreement or some legal issue, because it's not just when is it a good thing or when is it a good practice or when does this usually happen, but what determines when this will occur. Any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I answered B. This is Tammy. I answered B as well. And I think I actually think now that I see this again, I think I got it wrong when I took the practice exam. Yeah, I don't remember seeing this in the reading anywhere, but I'm sure it is. It's one of those tricks. Okay.
Okay. We will move on to the next question. You are the CSE of a national organization that has recently developed statewide chapters. While the chapters seem to be successful in reaching the local membership, there is tension between the chapters and their national counterpart. Which of the following is the best solution for settling this tension?
Any responses? I'm not seeing any responses come through, Lisa.
Okay. The answer is A.
Oh,
hold a formal meeting with the leaders of the local chapters to discuss the issues. And this is related to communication. Give them a forum to communicate with you, listen, communicate back, have that meeting with the leaders so that you can really discuss whatever issues are going on, and that would be the best solution for settling tension. Going through some of the other answers, release a public statement praising the local chapters. I mean, that's a nice thing, but I don't know that that would settle any tension necessarily. It's just kind of covering it up and not really communicating with the leaders to find out what's going on and why the tension exists. Let's see. Suggest that the National Board of Directors be restructured. That one I didn't like because that's a big issue, and most organizations have the Board of Directors structure and all of that in their bylaws, and that would require a vote of the membership in order to change. Just that would be probably would not settle any tension. And then D was kind of your throwaway where, you know, just get rid of the chapters. Probably not the best solution either. Okay, the resources for this domain are Association Law Handbook, of course. The whole first section was listed as part of the reading, which is a lot. But you've read probably all of it anyway by this point with the other domains, and I actually went through and reread all of those chapters, which is really helpful. It gives you sort of a the legal mind frame of where we're coming from, and talks more about the specific documents that Tammy went over. And then some other chapters there, professional practices and association management. I found chapters 1 to 2 and 7 more helpful than 5 and 8. That's just my thoughts. And then the JOSI Base Handbook, or BAS, I don't know how they say it, Handbook of Nonprofit Leadership and Management. That's a really good book if you want to get into the details of governance. Okay, and then next up we've got Domain 9 next Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern. Anybody have any questions or want to discuss anything further? Any questions when they were going through in the practice test questions and the study guide that you want to talk about?
Doesn't sound like we have any more conversation, just some thank yous. So thank you, Lisa, as well, for hosting the call.
Sure. Thank you, Tammy.
All right, we'll see you guys next Friday.
Next Friday. Thanks.
All right. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.